Welcome to the world's #1 fitness business podcast for health club owners, gym managers, and fitness entrepreneurs. As always, this will be a great show as we have another expert to help your fitness business and your career. We'd like to thank our premier sponsor, Active Management, for supporting us, and we highly recommend becoming a member of Active Management to strengthen your business in 2016. There are loads of resources members receive, so join the Active Tribe today at www.activemgmt.com.au. Now that's enough from me. Let's welcome the show's amazing host, Chantal. What's on this week's show?
Thanks, Harper. Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 4 of Podtober. This week's special guest is Jay Baer. He is a certified speaking professional and is a renowned business strategist, keynote speaker, and the New York Times best-selling author of 5 books, including Hug Your Haters. Today's focus is all around the topic of customer service and why it's essential, as Jay tells us, that we answer every complaint in every channel every time. But before we chat to Jay, there's actually something that I wanted to touch on really quickly. Now, in case you missed last week's show with Kate Cracknell, one of the things that she mentioned was a website called Gymtopia. It is full of the most inspiring stories of clubs doing amazing things to improve the lives of local, national, and international communities. It's a really great reminder of the opportunities that we all have to make a difference to other people's lives on any scale. So if you feel like you need a little bit of inspiration, or if you just want to see some of the wonderful things that are happening in our industry, then jump on and check out the site. It's www.gymtopia.org. Now, Tribe, I have a favor to ask. If you enjoy the show and if you find that you've been able to grow your business as a result of the things that you've heard, then could I ask you to jump onto iTunes and please leave us a review? I would be so grateful. Your support helps us continue to deliver the show to you every single week. All you need to do is go to iTunes, then podcasts, type in the Fitness Business Podcast, click on ratings and reviews, and then click on leave a review. Thank you so much in advance.
The Fitness Business Podcast is very appreciative of our podcast partners. Here's a quick word from one of our partners.
Active Management helps owners and managers have the business work for them. Test the quality of resources with a free download at www.fitnessbusinesspodcast.com/active. This week's flashback show is show 47 with Mo Hagan, and it's all about what group fitness will look like in 2021. So if you missed that show, go back and check it out. That is show 47, and you can find it on iTunes or at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. So Tribe, as we speak, I am actually busy working on our December shows. And like last year, we're going to be spending the month of December celebrating women in fitness. So make sure that you keep listening in the weeks to come. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe at the show notes at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. And that way you will never miss out on a show. Jay Baer is a certified speaking professional and is the world's most retweeted person amongst digital marketers. He is a renowned business strategist, keynote speaker, and the New York Times best-selling author of 5 books, including Hug Your Haters. Jay has advised more than 700 companies since 1994, including Caterpillar, Nike, Allstate, the United Nations, and 32 of the Fortune 500 companies. He is the founder of Convince and Convert, a strategy consulting firm that helps prominent companies gain and keep more customers through the smart intersection of technology, social media, and customer service. His Convince and Convert media division owns the world's #1 content marketing blog, the world's top marketing podcast, and many other education resources for business owners and executives. He is the creator of 5 multi-million-dollar companies. He is an active venture capitalist and technology advisor, as well as an avid tequila collector, and last but not least, a certified barbecue judge. That's right, you heard it. Now, I started by asking Jay if he has faced any hurdles on his road to success.
I've been super fortunate. I haven't had any sort of like near-death business experiences where I sort of, steered the car into the ditch, metaphorically. But I have had a few circumstances, including one recently, where I tend to come up with what I think are really good ideas, and then pursue them without fully thinking through exactly how that's going to work. And we're at a size and scale now at Convince and Convert that when that happens, that becomes a very expensive lesson. And I'm trying to break myself of that habit. But the last 2 years, I've jumped into a big project like, yeah, let's go do this thing and we're going to make all kinds of money at it. And then I was like, well, yeah, but this and this and this, and then it's too late. And so I'm trying to set my enthusiasm aside until we have fully figured out exactly how it's going to be executed and monetized. And it is definitely a weakness of mine that I'm working on.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now, you mentioned just then your business, Convince and Convert, which is such an awesome name, by the way. Can you maybe give our tribe a bit of a summary of what your business does?
Yeah, so we have 3 divisions. We have a speaking division, which is fairly self-evident. Myself and other people on our team give speeches and workshops and such to events all over the world. We have a consulting division, so we work with mostly bigger companies on social media strategy, content marketing strategy, influencer strategy, and customer service strategy. So we don't do tactics. We're not an agency. We don't do, advertising or public relations, things like that, but we do a lot of strategy. So we'll come in and somebody will say, hey, we already have a lot of social media. How can we make it better? And we'll come in and say, well, you should do this and you should do this and you should do this and you should do this. So we really are a strategic advisory firm on the consulting side. And the media side, we produce 6 different podcasts per week, 6 weekly shows. We do about 10 or 12 blog posts per week. We have a daily email newsletter, a lot of webinars and other things. And so we have a number of sponsors of that content. They're primarily software companies that want to reach other digital marketers, and that's sort of our core tribe. And so we try and put those software opportunities in front of their future customers.
That's brilliant. That's phenomenal. And I have enjoyed listening to your podcast in particular, actually. It's
thank you.
Really good. So we'll make sure, once again, that we pop your details or the podcast details plus Convince and Convert in today's show notes. Now, one of the many things that you do is keynote speaking. And actually how we got familiar with you is that you spoke at IHRSA this year.
Yeah. What a fun event. And love that event.
Did you love it?
Awesome. Oh, I loved it. One of my favorite events of the year, for sure.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Now, JT was, attended and he absolutely came back and raved to me about you. He also mentioned something about your jacket, and I've got you on camera today, and I can see that you have a
This is not the jacket, I don't think. I've got like a dozen of different kind of crazy. The crazy plaid jacket, actually usually suit, is kind of my thing.
I like it. I like the look. Okay.
But at IHRSA, it's amazing. Like, that's such a great conference, right? Because people are actually wearing like workout gear, like, obviously.
You can tell by me.
And it's so,
this is what we live in.
And it's so crazy because, I do 60 events a year, and that event had more spandex than any other event I will go to this whole year. I mean, I think it's a given.
I tell you, if you see anyone that is not wearing activewear at a fitness conference, then they're going to stand out.
There's probably a speaker, right? It's probably me.
Exactly. So let's talk about where do you see the fitness industry in the Convince and Convert world?
Well, the thing about the fitness industry is that you are always going to have people who don't like you. In many cases, it's because they somehow have not followed through on the covenant they made to themselves or to the club to get healthy and stay active and things like that. And they tend to displace that anger on the club or on the trainer as opposed to on themselves. I see it all the time. And I feel like in some cases, the fitness industry feels like, well, you know what, if you don't want to continue to be a member, et cetera, that's fine. We'll just get another member. But that's a dangerous game to play long term, right? There's only so many people out there who will ever conceivably be part of the fitness industry as members or as participants. And so I think the industry is a little too quick to write off unhappy customers.
Yeah, great answer. And actually, I'm going to touch on a little bit later on in your book, Hug Your Haters, because I know you talk a lot around that whole, retaining customers and that type of thing. So we'll dive into that. Now, I mentioned earlier in your bio that you have written 5 books. Do you have a favorite? Can you choose a favorite?
Well, the two books that I'm most known for are Hug Your Haters, which is the new one, which is about customer service and customer service disruption, and Utility, which is the one that preceded it, which is about marketing disruption, how to create marketing that is so useful people would pay for it. And so instead of trying to be amazing, you just try to be really, really helpful. Utility is probably my favorite only because it actually did what I wanted it to do, which is to become part of sort of the marketing lexicon and the marketing framework for companies all around the world. And lots of organizations say in their conference room, we want to do this thing. Well, is that a utility? It's actually sort of part of how people think about marketing now. And that's really awesome to have that kind of impact. So that's probably my favorite, and probably the one that people still know me the best for.
And I should mention that it's also a New York Times bestseller and an Amazon bestseller. So congratulations. That's absolutely Thanks. Huge. Before we do go on to talk about Hug Your Haters, do you want to grab for me, maybe pull out for me 3 of the key points about utility that if any of our tribe haven't yet read it, what are maybe a couple of the key takeaways from that particular book of yours?
Well, today, marketing is harder than ever. It's more competitive than ever. If you are trying to convince somebody to join your fitness organization, you're competing against everything, not just other fitness organizations in your community. You're competing against cat videos, and you're competing against, people's weird things that they're talking about on Facebook. You're competing against podcasts. I mean, there's just so much noise out there now. And the way to break through that is not to shout louder. It's to be more helpful, is to say, what can I give you that is actually of value to you? And if you do that, you build a relationship that will culminate in a customer over time. So if you think about it this way, if you sell something, you can create a customer today. But if you help someone, you can create a customer for life. And that's really the best way to approach it. And so what Utility asks you to do is to create marketing so useful people would pay for it. It's marketing that has so much intrinsic value that if I said, hey, Chantal, would you give me $5 for this? You'd say, yeah, I actually would. Now, I don't charge you because it's marketing. It still benefits me eventually, but it is so useful that you would actually give money for it. That's the test of whether or not it is, in fact, a utility. And one of the key tenets of this principle is that today people want to educate themselves in many cases, as opposed to you telling them why you're awesome. They want to discover why you're awesome. And so that includes things like blogging and videos and podcasts and creating content and putting it out there for free so that people can discover and learn. And they're like, oh yeah, they help me. And there's some great evidence of that in the fitness industry. So many people are doing how-to videos and other interesting tips and tricks and things like that. And it's great. That's exactly what you should be doing.
That's really interesting, because I think sometimes there is, maybe more so from people that are new within the fitness industry, there's a little bit of fear as to how much content should I put out there and not charge for it? How much content should I be producing? And we've actually touched on this on the show in previous shows. You should
give away everything you know, one bite at a time.
Excellent.
Everything you know, one bite at a time. And what people say is, well, if I do that, they won't have to hire me. And here's the truth. A list of ingredients doesn't make somebody a chef. So just because somebody watched a 3-minute video does not mean they're a personal trainer. And if you have a potential customer who says, well, I could hire this person as a trainer, or I could join this fitness club, or I could take some videos and do it myself at home, that's not... If their choice in their head is, I could get a trainer, join a facility, or I could watch some YouTube videos and do it myself, that person is never going to be a good client. They're never going to be a good customer, right? They're always going to try and opt for the DIY method. And so don't worry about those people. Your core customers are not the people who want to do it at home. Your core customers are people who are doing nothing today and need to get healthy.
Tribe, there you have it. Don't be afraid to share your knowledge to build relationships with your potential customers. Jay, I want to ask you about Hug Your Haters. I love the name of the book. Where did you come up with the name?
The book was originally going to be called something totally different. Yeah. And I did a bunch of research and discovered that lots of complaints are not answered now. A third of all customer complaints are never answered. And as a result, there's lots of unhappy people out there who could be happy if you just answered their problem. And so I started thinking, like, we have to somehow kind of describe what the advice is in a headline. And so we felt like, complainers is okay, but haters is such a familiar and a term that people use. And we just sort of kind of came to us and kind of put a lot of words together and said, oh, hug your haters. And as always, I've been thinking about it. And I was in the shower and it just popped into my head the exact same way that utility happened. I was in the same shower 4 years earlier and the utility title popped in my head too. So I think if I keep taking tons of showers and I don't move, I've got a lot more book titles in
Yeah, absolutely. And it's where all the best ideas happen in the shower. There's no doubt.
It's true.
So from a research perspective, I mean, you did a lot of research for this book. And is that a side of it that you enjoy doing?
I mean, sure. I've been involved in a fair bit of market research in my day, but it wasn't necessarily like I love research, I want to research. It was, hey, customer service is being disrupted in the same way that marketing has been disrupted. And for the same reasons, mobile and social and millennials and all that. But everybody talks about marketing disruption. I mean, there's hundreds or thousands of books about new marketing, 4 by me. Very few people talk about customer service disruption because most people think they're pretty good at customer service already. They're not, but most people think they are. And so I thought, okay, look, if I'm going to write a book about customer service and essentially say, you think you're good at customer service, but you're not, I can't just show up and say, Jay says that you're not good at this. Like, there's got to be more meat on the bone there. And so that's when we decided to do the research and conduct this big study about the science of complaint and what's happening today. And then based on the research, we're able to write a book that isn't just my advice, but it's like real math and science behind the principles.
Brilliant. And you talk in the book about, you say, complainers present an opportunity for us. Mm-hmm. Do you want to explain to our listeners what you mean by that?
So it turns out that when somebody complains, well, let me say it a different way to begin with. Only 5% of unhappy customers ever complain. 5%. Okay. If you have 100 unhappy customers, only 5 will tell you about it. The other 95 just disappear. Now they may be complaining about you to their friends, but you don't know. They don't say it to you, phone, email, Facebook, Twitter, letter, whatever. Only 5 will tell you in some fashion. So that means that those 5 people who do complain are really rare and really important because they're the only chance you have to actually really know what's going on. Well, it turns out that even though it's only 5% or 5% complain, as I mentioned a moment ago, a lot of complaints are not answered. A third of all complaints are never answered, and most of those are now in public, ironically, social media and places like that. We're pretty good at answering the phone. People are pretty good at answering email. But when it comes to Facebook and things like that, we're like, whatever, Yelp or review sites and stuff like that. So the research found that when you answer somebody's complaint, it makes them much, much, much more likely to be loyal and more likely to advocate on your behalf. And when you don't answer their complaint, then they become much less loyal and much less likely to advocate on your behalf. So to say this a cleaner way, if you answer a complaint, it takes a bad situation and makes it better. If you don't answer a complaint, it takes a bad situation and makes it worse. And so what you have to do is answer everybody. That's the strategy.
Okay, and you talk in the book about 2 types of complainers. Do you want to tell us about what you've called them so that everyone knows what you've called them, and tell us a little bit about those 2 different types?
Absolutely. So the research found there's 2 types of haters, and I call them off stage and on stage. Now, the off stage people are called off stage because they complain in private and phone and email, typically phone and email. And those people are a little bit older and a little bit less social media savvy and a little less technical. Not dramatically so, just a little. And they complain in phone and email. And when they complain, they want an answer. 90% of the time, they want and expect an answer. And that's true for you. If you call a business, you expect them to call you back or at least wait on hold and talk to somebody. If you email a business, you expect them to email you back. It's just how business is done now. That's the deal, right? The other group, the onstage haters, I call them onstage because they complain in public. So they complain on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Yelp, TripAdvisor, whatever the ratings and review sites are in your particular town or your particular industry. There's tons of them all over the place, all the public forums and platforms. Now, those people, a little younger, a little more social media savvy, as you might suspect, et cetera. But it's not, I don't want to overplay that. It's not old people and kids. It's not that big of a difference, right? It's just a little bit. Yeah. But the people who complain on stage don't necessarily expect to hear back from you, because in many cases they're complaining about you, but not to you. So what happens all the time, you'll see this in Facebook. Somebody's on Facebook and they're complaining about some experience they had with a restaurant or a fitness facility or an airline or whatever. Airlines in particular in Australia, man, people hate the airlines down there. It's crazy. It's like unbelievable. And so they'll say, blah, 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 I hate those guys, whatever. And then they don't actually expect the business to respond. What they want is all their friends to say, oh, that's terrible. I'm so sorry that happened. They want like this group empathy wave to happen, this like pity party. And it's a huge opportunity for businesses, because if they can find those comments and then jump in there and say, hey, I'm really sorry you're upset. We didn't know. What can we do? The research shows that the impact on advocacy then is enormous. Those people are like, oh my God, I can't believe you found it and you answered my question. I wasn't even directing it to you, per se. Yeah. It is a huge opportunity to drive loyalty and customer satisfaction. So we just have to listen harder, and most companies just aren't ready to do it yet.
I think in the book when you're talking about this, you mentioned something about when people do, let's say, tweet a complaint about a company, the percentage of them that actually do the whatever the company name is so tiny.
3%.
3%. Absolutely tiny. So therefore, it's up to us as business owners to be really diligent, as you're saying, about making sure that we are seeking out and trying to search our business name.
Look, social media and all that doesn't work like the phone. Like if somebody calls you, the phone rings. If somebody emails you, it shows up in your email. You don't have to go looking for it, right? It's just there. But in social media and review sites and all these new places that are public, you have to actually do some detective work to go find these things. And you need to do that, because if the third of complaints are not answered, no response is a response. No response is a response that says, we don't care about you as a customer at all.
And you have this great phrase in the book, which I feel like all of us should have up on our wall, and it is every complaint, every channel, every time.
Yes. That's the strategy. Answer everybody.
Jay, what happens when we don't respond to a customer?
So when you don't respond, two things happen. That customer is almost for sure never coming back. Okay, so you lose any opportunity to save that customer. And second, they are much, much more likely to then tell their friends not only about the negative experience, but the fact that they had a negative experience and then you never answered their complaint. And so now that person becomes a mouthpiece for negativity about your organization or about you as an individual. So it's just a dangerous game to play.
Absolutely. Okay, Jay, I want to talk to you because we haven't got much time left. I want to know about your podcast. Tell our listeners about the Social Pros podcast.
Thanks. I started it almost 5 years ago, socialpros.com, and my co-host Adam Brown and I interview each week somebody who is a social media manager, director, vice president, et cetera, for usually relatively big organizations. And we talk about, okay, what really happens if you're running social media for 3M or for Nike or companies like that. And it's really interesting to kind of get that inside baseball account of what does it require and how do they organize their team and how do they decide what to do and what are some of their successes and cool things they're doing on Instagram and all that. So it's a really fun show to do. And I've gotten to meet a ton of interesting people. We're on episode 255 or something like that. And it's a lot of fun and it's ended up being a real success. And so it has then spawned lots of other shows, which is why we have a whole podcast network now.
That is incredibly exciting, and we will make sure that we put the link through to your podcast on
Thanks.
Our podcast. Two more questions for you, Jay. Number one, is there anything, we've covered a lot of ground already today. Are there any questions that if you had the opportunity that you think that you would ask yourself that I haven't already asked you?
Well, the one thing I will say is you have to make sure especially in the fitness industry, where a lot of it is very human. Like, your customers in a lot of cases, right? You can't take it personally. And it's a huge problem for small businesses in particular, where when somebody complains, they take it personally, because it feels like somebody's telling you your baby's ugly. And that is difficult to handle. Yeah. And you have to understand that in many cases, it's not personal, even though it might feel personal. And do not answer negative with negative. It doesn't matter how outrageous the customer is. It doesn't matter whether they're totally wrong. None of that matters. Resist the temptation to say, well, yeah, but this is what happened and you're terrible. You didn't show up for your appointment and blah, 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 blah. It is counterproductive, because number one, it might make you feel better for 30 seconds. But the most important thing is that everybody else is going to now see, especially online, how you handle that. And that does not reflect well on you or your business. And so I'm not suggesting that the customer is always right, because they're not. But I am suggesting that the customer should always be heard. So you should answer every complaint in every channel every time, but you should do it with some class.
Excellent, excellent. Before we move on to your last 3 tips, which I'm hoping you're going to be able to share with us some strengthening business tips, I do want to just touch.
I was going to just answer tequila tips. I thought that was that.
Give us some
not what we're doing.
Recipes,
okay. Do my best.
I do want to mention this, and you can see what I'm holding up in front of me.
Yeah, the Hatrix.
What does that say? The Hatrix. And I do want to
Hatrix.
mention on that before we do finish up today. Can you just quickly tell our tribe about the Hatrix?
Yeah. So it was really neat. In the book, my publisher let me put a poster in the middle of the book, which has all the kind of key data from the research project. And so you can actually take that out of your book if you want and put it on your wall, et cetera. And so the Hatrix talks about the onstage versus offstage haters, which we talked about a minute ago. And then also talks about how satisfied people are with each complaint vehicle. So phone, email, social media, et cetera. How fast you have to respond, things like that. So it's sort of a quick place, almost an infographic, if you will, to get all the key data that you need to make good decisions.
Yeah, I love it. It's going up on my wall.
The Fitness Business Podcast is very appreciative of our podcast partners. Here's a quick word from one of our partners.
Check this out. If you're interested in increasing your center's incomes and your trainers' incomes from small group training, then Tribe Team Training is the new way to get more members engaged in small group training and get them paying extra. Do this, Tribe. Go to tribeteamtraining.com.au/podcast so you can jump on and see how much income you can make from small group training. Now, let's go back to Jay as he leaves us with his top 3 tips for strengthening your business.
Top 3 tips. Number one, if you're trying to expand your business, at some point you're going to be scared. You're going to be scared to take risks. You're going to be scared to do the next thing. You're going to be scared to get outside your comfort zone. And I want you to understand that there is no such thing as fear. Fear is all in your head. Danger is real. Fear is imaginary. And the only way you're going to break out of your comfort zone and achieve your goals is to understand that fear is only in your head. So here's what I do. Anytime I'm scared, I take a piece of paper and a pen and I write down exactly what I'm scared of. And when you do that, when you add specificity to your fears, in many cases you realize, like, wait a second, I'm being foolish. I should just go ahead and do that. So that is one tip to sort of take your business and frankly your life to the next level. Second tip, most important thing in business, most important word in business, I should say, is no. If you're any good at all, and you are good, otherwise you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. If you're any good at all, you're going to have a lot of opportunities. Opportunity volume is not going to be your problem. Your problem is going to be picking opportunities. So I am a huge believer in a philosophy that was started by my friend Derek Sivers, which is called hell yes or no. So when you're presented with an opportunity, you only have 2 choices. You can either say hell yes, and if you don't say hell yes, you must say no. Only do things in business that you are completely fired up about, and that will serve you very, very well.
Great advice.
The third thing, the third tip that I have for you goes back to the utility philosophy, which is stop trying to shine the spotlight on you and instead shine the spotlight on other people. And if you become the person in your industry, in your town, on your street, in your own household, who is always trying to make sure that everybody knows how great everybody else is, eventually that totally comes back on you tenfold. So stop talking about how great you are and talk about how great everybody else is, and you will actually have greater success. It's a little bit counterintuitive, but trust me, it will work.
Jay, thank you so much. Tribe, make sure you head out, grab a copy of Hug Your Haters. We will make sure that we put all of the links to your books, your business, your podcast on today's show notes. Jay, it is such an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. So thank you for joining us on the Fitness Business Podcast.
Anytime, Matthew. Next time I'm going to do it shirtless. I'm going to be all ripped up.
You're going to be in your activewear.
Yes, in my active suit. We need a suit like this that's activewear.
Yeah.
You guys got to work on that. I'm sure somebody who listens to the show can do that.
Yeah, I reckon we can get you a tracksuit that's like that.
Oh, let's do that.
That's what we need.
We can get a track. I'm coming back on. I'm doing it.
Okay, done deal. Hey, Jay, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure.
Precor Quickfire 5.
Susan Fowler is a global speaker, consultant, trainer, and coach. She's also the author of bylined articles, peer-reviewed research, and 6 books, including the best-selling Self-Leadership and The 1 Minute Manager with Ken Blanchard. Welcome to the show, Susan.
Thank you so much, Chantal.
Now, are you ready for your Quickfire 5?
Yeah, let's try it.
Let's do it. Why do you do what you do?
You know, I actually have a life purpose. I hope you don't think that's too corny, but I have a life purpose to be a catalyst for change. And so every day I get up and I say, how am I going to make my life better today? And how is that going to help make somebody else's life better? And so that's why I do what I do.
Love it. And what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
You can create your own reality.
Very good. And what's a personal habit that helps you become better at what you do?
One of the good things about writing about motivation is that I need to practice it. So every day I practice motivation as a skill, and I am mindful. I think about my values, and I do my best to live my purpose.
Susan, other than, of course, your own books, what's one book that you'd recommend and why?
Probably one of the top 3 books in my life is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. He really talks about one of the 3 psychological needs that every human being needs in order to thrive, and that's our sense of autonomy. And his book is so inspirational. I wish everybody would read it. It would just take a couple of hours. It's truly one of the finest books I think ever written.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And we always make sure we include the link in the show notes, so we'll make sure that gets out to our tribe. Now, why should we come back next week and listen to the main interview?
I have to be honest with you. I honestly believe that the fitness industry has a number of common practices that is undermining the ability to keep your staff, to acquire new customers, and to retain those customers. And a lot of things we've always thought was true about motivation have been proven scientifically to be dead wrong. So I want to give your listeners just a new frame of reference about motivation and some really practical, pragmatic ways that they can change their practices and I think make a difference in their business.
I am absolutely fascinated to hear what you have to say, Susan. So thank you so much for joining us for the Quickfire 5, and we will chat to you next week for your main interview.
Thank you.
It's time for the Fitness Business Podcast Wrap.
Here are my top takeaways from this week's show. Jay told us, if you sell something, you can create a customer today. But if you help someone, you can create a customer for life. He said, when you answer someone's complaint, it takes a bad situation and makes it better. But if you don't answer someone's complaint, it takes a bad situation and makes it worse. Therefore, his advice is, you must answer everybody. He also said that no response is a response. And the response is, we don't care. And last but not least, Jay said to answer every complaint in every channel, every time. Tribe, before I sign off for this week's show, here's a quick word from one of our wonderful former guests, Michelle Seeger.
Hi, I'm Michelle Seeger, and I was a guest on show 33. You've been listening to another outstanding guest. If you know someone who could benefit from listening to the show, please share the show by email, Facebook, or Twitter. All possible on next week's show notes. If you really want business tips, you had better hit up on my show. Trust me, it's an awesome show, and I talk about how our internet actions with physical activity makes our meaning for exercise. I talk about self-determination theory, one of the most important theories you need to know to create lasting motivation for exercise, how we can frame behavior, as well as specific tips to help clients learn how to stick with and love exercise, including how gamification can help our clients fuel the desire for more exercise. So if that sounds interesting to you, go to www.fitnessbusinesspodcast.com and in the search bar, type my name, Michelle Segar, and that's spelled MICHELLESEGAR, and my show will pop up. So that's this week's show now finished, and Chantel will be back next week with another wonderful guest.
Great show this week that you should be suffering DOMs, delayed onset mind soreness, as you are overloaded and that's when your mind is strengthened. You and your business have been strengthened thanks to the amazing support of our premier sponsor, Active Management. Check out www.activemgmt.com.au only if you want to strengthen your business and your leadership. Don't forget all today's links and notes are found at www.fitnessbusinesspodcast.com, where you can also subscribe and never miss a show and maybe win a prize. Next week is another incredible guest with Chantal, so get ready for more Fit Bizpiration.